Trevor. How are you?
I am fantastic, bro. Welcome to today's show, everybody. We are here. I am coming to you live and in person back on the mainland from a Bahamas cruise. I'm excited to debrief on that one. There was some interesting things I learned about cruises and all of that. But it was a good time, man. How are you doing this morning, Shane?
Doing well. It's been a busy week, and it's Friday, which is one day later than we normally record these, and
Yeah.
I'm a little bit more tired. You know, that's sort of my MO is get more tired as the week goes through, and then usually Thursday is a catch-up day, but didn't happen this week on sleep, and then so I would probably do it Saturday.
There we go.
Now, your cruise was out of the Bahamas, so
Yeah.
you fly out of Miami then for that?
Yep. Yep. So we spent a couple days in Miami, and that was it. Was you know what? Here's it's not like I don't know this, but like at the time we're recording this, it's the middle of July, which obviously it's hot.
Yeah.
So it was just hotter than I expected, and for some reason in my mind I was thinking once we got out on the water, and it was going to cool down, and it 100% didn't. And I've just decided I do not like that kind of heat on the East Coast. It was just like I'm every day I was like trying to find an air conditioned spot somewhere or shade or so it was pretty toasty, but yeah, it was I don't know, it was good. Here's what I'll tell you. First, the pre-frame on it. This cruise was actually something that I wouldn't have chosen to do on my own. This was something that my mother-in-law wanted to basically treat the whole family. So there was 28 of us family members between, siblings and in-laws and all that stuff that went on this cruise. And so we all end up on this cruise that I didn't really pick, and it was just kind of anyhow. So, but we end up there, and I'm the first 2 hours. It was like I was at a music festival. You couldn't even hardly walk anywhere. And I remember just thinking, I'm like, oh my hell, I'm going to be on this thing for the next 6 days on this cruise. And I'm like, there's just people everywhere. And this is crazy. I'm like, I might end up just staying in my cabin the entire time and hiding from everyone. But no, it was good though. But yeah, it was different. It was, I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever do it again.
How long has it been since you did a cruise?
So long, 15 years.
And this was how long was this one?
This one was 5
Five.
day, 5 night, 6 days. So they call it a 6 day, but really that 6 days
Yeah.
like you're at port, so you're not really
Yeah.
doing anything. But yeah, it was good to get away. I'm telling you right now, and I'm sure you have the same exact problem, Shane. But I had to convince myself to disconnect from work for
Yeah.
the whole time. Like when we were flying to Miami, I just closed my eyes and was just meditating. Basically, it's about 5 hours of flight time, and as we're flying in, I'm literally just sitting there trying to convince myself that this is a good thing, and to try to be present and let go of work. And it's interesting because what we talk about here on the show all the time, just this: if you don't invest in all areas of your life, how that really can affect you. And this is one of those where I was being forced to let go, totally disconnect, and I purposely didn't get the Wi-Fi on the cruise, and then
Oh,
I just
yeah.
pretended like there was no way for me to use my phone to communicate with people. So I just didn't have my phone on me, and it was like I was missing this big part of me the whole time because I didn't know what was going on, and at home and with work and all. It was I think it was mental gymnastics for me the whole cruise.
I was gonna say that's I think I'm a little better than you
Yeah,
in
you
that
are, for
area,
sure.
but I will say after like 5-6 days, I start getting really twitchy, and you know I've always gotten the Wi-Fi on the cruise anyway, so like the full disconnect is pretty tough. I'm pretty good at like, okay, I'm gonna be distracted usually for like 10 minutes, or I'm gonna scroll through some junk, while we're sitting near the pool and people watching or something, right? So,
Right.
but full disconnect. I told you this, like back earlier in the year, me and my wife did about a full weekend where we had no phones, and I think it was actually really good and interesting. It was fun, I would say.
Yeah.
Now that was a shorter period of time, right? That was like, 3 days or something.
Yeah.
And I think that quote digital detox that people talk about is really good. Uh, it makes me wonder why we don't do it more. Is what I'll say.
Oh, I completely agree, and it was great, and I kind of sound like I'm like making it like this bad situation, but it was great to do it. It was just a lot harder than I thought it would be to
Yeah.
disconnect the way that I did, because I've been on plenty of trips and been on plenty of vacations, but I just never fully said, "Okay, this is no, right? Put the X up,
Yeah.
throw the phone away, put every technology away," and nobody could call me, no one could get a hold of me. And it was in. I got back, and there was like debates going about who was going to have the most notifications, and I just laughed at everyone I'm with. I'm all, if any of you beat me, I will be shocked out of my mind. I'm all, but good luck. I'm like, but we'll see. And if we get back into service, I'd flip my phone, and I had my phone on airplane mode the whole time anyway. So even
Yeah.
if anyone tried, I wouldn't have known. And so I turned it back on. We're sitting right off of the boat, and you just watched. It was like we were at the casino, and my phone was like the jackpot machine. It's just like just nonstop. And yeah, it was yeah. So that
I,
was kind of weird, and I just spent the entire flight home just going back through messages and responding to things, and yeah,
I,
yeah,
and you talk about the transition, right, from work to vacation mode, and I came to the conclusion a couple of years ago, I would I'd get on the plane with my wife to go somewhere, and I usually would have some work I was going to do on the plane, or I would listen to a business podcast or read a business book, and I figured out that didn't really work well because there was no real transition from because then we'd get off the plane, I'm on vacation, but I've been working, essentially working for 2 hours on the plane or whatever, right? So it wasn't a great smooth transition to vacation, Ron, or vacation, Shane, with my
yeah.
wife. Um, so I had to figure out that, okay, once we sort of get on the plane, so, I've got to transition to not a business book, right? Not a business podcast, sort of some kind of junk book, right? Some kind of fantasy novel or something like that to sort of ease my way into vacation mode or signal this is does that make sense
Yeah.
that I'm on the
Yep.
trip?
Yep. Totally does. It's like it's like just slowly walking into the deep end instead of just jumping straight into it with this hard transition.
And that's what I had to do from when I get home as well. I've talked to you about that, my struggles in the past. I would work during my commute too, right? On phones and all that, and then I get home and I'm still in business mode, and my wife's like, "Hey, this is not," you know what I mean? She's like, "This is you're kind of grumpy," and I realized I am kind of grumpy at her, but I'm in a different mode, different expectations, different whatever.
Yeah.
So I had to work on transitions there, and when I work from home, that's a huge struggle for me is the transition because I find myself working later or going from work boom right to dinner with my family, and that transition is super super hard, and it was actually easier when I had a 30-minute commute versus now, which in Peachtree City I got like 7 minutes,
Yeah.
right? So I also don't have a transition there. So I think these transitions are something we overlook and don't spend a lot of time on,
Yeah.
but are really, a lot of us need them is what I'll say, right?
Well, and I think your point is totally valid in even the micro transitions, and this is something that I didn't fully translate to vacation and taking time to totally unplug and disconnect, because I'll tell you right now how I feel. Right, is like totally chomping at the bit. I feel like I'm back in the race gates, and I'm like, dude, the race needs to start again. I'm like, so like my energy level to go build stuff and to just get into business mode and be in that is like, it's heightened like 10x from what it was, a week and a half ago before I left, even though I feel like I was still at a pretty high red line of let's go.
Yeah.
But that unplug and then plugging back in, it's like, I don't know, there's this renewed. And then I was our neighbor, where we just moved to the other day. Before I went on vacation, I was just driving out, and it was right after I'd kind of finished a long day of calls, and I leave, and they were outside, so I pulled over on the side of the road and was just chatting with them, and had just met them. They're great people, and we're chatting, and the wife was like, "Where are you going?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm doing my ritual." And she looks at me kind of funny, and I'm like, "Yeah, it's my ritual. I go down to the gas station, which is like 2 miles, well, probably like 4 or 5 miles from my house, and I go down to the gas station and I grab a drink, and then I go drive around. We live in a place called Ogden Valley, and it's just around these bunch of ski resorts, this mountain community. and then I'll go drive around it, which takes me about 15, 20 minutes, and then I come back home. And I was telling her, this is my reset. This is my mini little unplug, so that I can make the transition from work Trevor, business Trevor, the guy who's, yelling at people Trevor, to, hey, sweetheart, I love you. How was your day? And I do that transition it would be rare for me not to do that. And my office is here in the house, and so I could just walk in and not do that. And I agree. And I think it's critical, because when you don't ever unplug like that, I think you lose speed and you don't know it, and you lose the ability to pivot, and you don't realize it's happening. And
I think it's part of the grind down. Where we get in it, and it's easy to confuse activity with productivity as well, right? But when you're in that mode, usually I've seen it in myself and in other people, there is no thinking time. You're go, which is fine, and it's the hustle mode and the grind mode, and there's a time and place for that, but you're usually not strategically thinking, you're not planning, you're not, there's nothing strategic about dealing with a problem that's right in front of you.
But one of the things I've missed, I was talking to my son about this on the way home from the cruise, and one of the things I miss about one of the companies I owned was that I had a really long drive associated with it, because we had to get gear across the country, so we're driving these big trucks, and I'd have to get the gear. And so I'd always have like this 8 to 10 hour drive would be kind of at the end of this big event we would do, and then I'd have this 8 to 12, sometimes 2 days worth of a drive if we were driving across the country or something. But I always had a drive, and that drive, I loved it because of exactly what you're talking about. It was like that, okay, I could switch modes, and I could think, and I can process what just happened and then what's coming up. And it's a critical time for any business owner, like and all you guys out there running your own firms and trying to push it. I'm like, if you don't have that time to do that, whether it's a vacation to do that, because I spent plenty of time sitting by the pool, even though I'm disconnected, but as I'm sitting by the pool, my mind is going through, okay, where are we really at? Like with a couple projects that we're working on, what do we really want to do? What are some things we need to look at? And there's a couple things that we'll call them ideas that I've brainstormed with myself sitting by the pool that I'm now going to be taking action on, that I really didn't even think about before, that I think are pretty damn critical for the success of what I'm working on, that I needed to think about it at some point. And the vacation actually, believe it or not, gave me that, without trying to do it, it gave me that window to do that.
It
makes sense?
Yeah, and the thing about vacation ideas is you don't have the distractions. I think you do get to sink in. It's also sort of a reduced pace, right?
Yeah.
So ideas can percolate and they can bounce around and almost be distilled a little bit, at least in your own microcosm.
Yeah.
And then, which is different than like a brainstorming session in a room full of 3 or 4 or 5 people, like a retreat or just going through stuff, right? And I like that time alone, right? Some of my best ideas come there because there's no objection from anybody else, right? So you don't have to convince anybody. You're just convincing yourself. And some of those ideas are good, and some are probably pretty terrible, right? And the terrible is when you come back to the office and you talk about what happened, and then they're like, "Dude, that's pretty dumb," or like that's never going to work, or they start listing that. But I think the non-objection time for those ideas is critical to get to some of the key points.
Do you think is that easy for you, or is it harder for you to do that? Like, can you? What I mean is, like, I find that it's pretty, like, maybe it's a skill set that I just have. I find that I can have lots of ideas. Like, when I'm, like, over this last week, there was a lot of things that would, like, put together in my mind and kind of play out, like, and, play it like I'm future casting it into really happening. But I would do it in a way without constraint.
Yeah.
Right? It was like almost daydreaming, we call it.
Yeah.
But not quite daydreaming like a little kid, but kind of daydreaming a little bit. Like, do you feel like, are you good at that? Or
I think I'm pretty good at that. I hit sort of an upper limit for some of my, those, we'll say future casting or daydreaming, right?
Yeah.
So I hit some limits, and that's one of the reasons why I try to I like groups, and I like to be around other people that are further ahead from me, because
Yeah.
without that, I, I felt in the past I sort of put limitations on what I believed was possible,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously there's TV and there's movies and we all know their stories, you know, what is it? Microsoft was started in somebody's garage. Okay,
Right.
I get it. One dude in the world started $1 billion company in his garage with like him and some computers taped together, whatever. That's the story.
Yeah.
But that's fine. I don't know that guy. I have no interaction with him. I can even buy his books and read them, but I don't really know him. It's not like I can call him up on the phone and be like, "Hey, I got this idea. What do you think?" Or even
Right.
just being in his presence can inspire me. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, for me, I hit limitations on. I had to know somebody for them at least a little bit, right? Like to know them to have them sort of chip away. This is possible, or this
Right.
journey is possible, and that's what groups do for me. They get rid of that upper limit, right? Like I can remember years ago, I was at $2 or $3 million in revenue, and I felt pretty stoked, dude. I felt like I was crushing it in my own little world. I was probably, if not the big dog, pretty darn big, in
Mm-hmm.
that group. And then I go to another group and I'm like, dude, I'm like middle of the pack at best, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, shit, I got to get my stuff in gear. But it sort of cracks some stuff in my head like, okay, this ceiling's not here. These are real people I know who got the same problems I do and they're doing, double or triple or quadruple what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Crap, I can do it too. Even, I would say a couple months ago, I bumped into a guy who, his company just went from like 30 million to like 50 million.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, shit, I know that guy. He's pretty smart, but is he that much smarter than me? Twice as smart? I don't think
Right.
so.
Right.
Maybe in his own little area, his expertise, but I got my own expertise here. And I'm like, dude, if that joker can do it, I can do it, right? So it sort
Mm-hmm.
of reinvigorated me, the groups. So, in answer to your question, I think I'm pretty good at future casting, but I hit limits, right? When I
Right.
haven't been exposed to somebody at this level, my limit may be here, right? Does that
Mm-hmm.
make sense? Kind
It
of deal?
totally does. Yeah. Well, it's interesting when you bring that up. Like, there was like tons of people on the cruise. I think there was like almost 4,000. It was a pretty big boat. It was pretty, but it was like on this boat for these days at sea. I mean, so many people. But and you talked earlier about like people watching. Right? It's
Yeah,
probably the funnest. I love doing that in an airport. But dude, I haven't been on a cruise for so long, I forgot what that's like.
yeah,
And like people watch on a cruise is like the greatest thing ever because you got people in their very casual mode, right? My father-in-law, he's 82. We're sitting at the dinner table, and he's making some. My mother-in-law was making some jokes. I don't remember exactly how it came about that he said this, but it was something about how hard, like a lot of the girls and women there do not wear a lot of clothes, right, on a cruise.
okay,
It's,
yeah.
it's like right. He's all I have two words to describe this cruise: butts and boobs. I just died laughing, and we all knew what he's talking about. I mean, it's hilarious. But anyhow, my point of what I'm sharing is like, I was I was just watching all these people that I'd never seen or never met before, and they had their own life and they're doing their own thing. And it was weird. There's one of these pool thoughts, right, sitting on the side of the pool, and it was just like, there aren't any real rules. And it's like you talk about like the upper limit is where you kind of you cap yourself, and
Yeah.
I just was looking at all these different people and from so many different walks of life, right? Everybody was dramatically different. They all came from their life, wherever they were at before they got on this cruise. We all happened to converge for these 6 days on this boat. But before that, we didn't know and then after that, we didn't know who each other. We're not going to spend any time together. And it was interesting. I sat there and I was like, man, there's no limit to the things you want to do. Like everybody gets to do their own life, and I was like, well, I get to do that too. I can do my life the way I want. I can make adjustments. I can totally shift directions if I wanted. I could. There's just nothing. It was like that's where my creativity side just
Yeah.
really started to expand because I was like, okay, well, if there's not a limit, what am I doing right now that I don't want to do? What could I do with the business that I haven't thought about? Like if there were no limits, then could we do this? Well, yeah, why not? And it was interesting because another rabbit hole I went down in that thought process was like, if somebody can do something, well, that means I could do something,
Right.
whatever it is. Like fill in the something, and it was like building that, and you bring up Microsoft, and that's where my mind went a couple times, just because there's a couple software program or projects we're working on, and I was like, dude, why couldn't we do that? Like, what would that look like to do that? I'm like, oh, okay, well, it was cool. Tons of ideas, and I'm sure most of them suck. Most of them are
I'm sure most of them are, but if 3 out of 4 suck, but that means 1 out of 4 is pretty good, right? Or 2 out of 3. And, that brings an interesting point. And I was thinking as you're talking about this, like, not only are you never going to meet these people, most of them care nothing about you.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So we get all this stuff in our head about, oh, if I do this, everybody's going to think I'm crazy. And most people got their own lives going on. They're not concerned about you whatsoever. And
even your haters who you think care about you, they gave you a fleeting thought.
Right.
And then they went about their own life.
Yeah.
Even when they talk shit to you. It was in that moment they talk shit, and then 5 minutes later they moved on.
Right. Yeah.
And you're sitting there stewing thinking everybody cares. It's totally true.
Right. And you think they're thinking about you all the time. And that's a conversation I have with people. They're like, so-and-so didn't respond to my email or text. I'm like, and they want to interpret that as, they chose not to go to dinner or whatever, right? Usually it's not that at all. Usually it's everybody's busy. They got their own stuff going on. They saw your email. They saw your text. They're like, oh, that might be fun to do. Or, I don't know that I can do that. I need to check my calendar. And then some fire popped up.
Yep.
And boom, they never made it back, especially an email, right? I mean, some people keep the moving email, right? Or the moving inbox where they just keep everything in one inbox and it just got moved down the list. I mean, it
just got buried.
Yeah.
Just got buried. That's such a good point because some of you guys listening, because you're just like Shane, you and I are the same in that we're all the same in that we're not doing what we want to do with our business, even with our life. We're putting these limited ceilings on ourselves because we haven't even given ourselves a chance to even think about what could be possible, because half the time we're so worried about either the logical logistics about how you do it, just like you brought up Microsoft, right? There's no logical path to creating a software company in your freaking garage that ends up becoming the software company. There's no logical path for that. There's no logical path for even your firm.
No.
Like where it's at right now. There's no logical path that said, hey, if I do A, B, and C, I'm going to end up here.
No.
You had to dream. You had to imagine. You had to do things that you weren't comfortable doing, that were outside of that realm. And I think that's that unplug that we're talking about in today's show is just if you don't give yourself the shot to do that, you will miss it. You have blinders on like a racehorse, and you won't be able to see the pivots and the moves because you're so stuck into the ruts of what it is you're doing that becomes what you do, whether you want to do it or not.
And you just put those fires out in front of you, and you just move from fire to fire. And some of us are great firefighters, right? I mean, for years I thought I was a wonderful firefighter. And now I don't think I'm as good a firefighter because they pissed me off. I'm like, this should have never happened. This fire should have never started, right? It's a totally different mindset.
Yep.
As we're wrap up today, because we're going to roll into the next podcast, and this limit talk I think is key, and we'll talk about it more next week or next podcast, because I was thinking about my goals halfway through the year and what they mean to me, and reworking on some of them, and I was hitting my own issues. So I think these limit issues is a huge issue, limited thinking. So or upper limits, I guess. So Trevor, final thoughts today as you come back?
Yeah, well, I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to have had the unplug. But like I said, I'm feel like a racehorse ready to go. And if you guys are not taking time, maybe you can't go take 8 days, 10 days and unplug. Maybe you can't even take 2 days. Go take 20 minutes. Go take an hour. Go spend an afternoon and unplug and give yourself the shot to be able to just pull away from the grind for a minute and be able to give yourself vision to see something. Because I can promise you, I mean, at least I can't guarantee what's going to happen, but what I know is going to happen is that I'm renewed in my ability and my desire to just drive and push forward, and it's critical. So just take that time, and then, like I said, Shane, we'll talk in next week's show on this limited idea, or the limits we place on ourselves, and really what difference that can make. I mean, you're sitting here, all your listeners, both Shane and I are very successful business owners who have created companies and all you law firm owners, Shane has built the model. Like, he has it down. Like, it's, you and I have talked through your model, I don't know how many times, like a gajillion times, and it's if you've never done it, it seems complicated. But if you have done it and you got a guide to follow, it's pretty damn simple. So, anyhow, if you got value from today's show, we appreciate you guys being listeners, but we want to get as many attorneys out there listening to the show as possible. And we're just two dudes chilling, having a good time, and talking about the things we've learned in business. So if you got value, share the show up with somebody else you know, and give us a like and a subscribe, and we will see you in next week's show.